Welcome to a journey into the mind of one of America's most infamous serial killers, Ted Bundy. A man of contradictions, Bundy was both charming and monstrous, intelligent yet impulsive, a figure that has puzzled psychologists, law enforcement, and the public alike for decades. Imagine the countless books, documentaries, and academic papers trying to dissect the psyche of this complex individual. Yet, despite all the scrutiny, Ted Bundy remains an enigma, a dark puzzle that we're still trying to solve. In this in-depth exploration, we're not just recounting the chilling facts and gruesome details of his crimes. We're diving deep into the psychological makeup of a man who defied societal norms in the most horrifying ways. What drove him to commit such heinous acts? How could someone so charismatic be so malevolent? So, buckle up as we delve into the life, crimes, and psychological profile of Ted Bundy. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about human behavior, morality, and the mind of a killer. Before he became the notorious figure that sent chills down the spines of people across America, Ted Bundy was a child, a student, a young man navigating the complexities of life. But what were the early signs that hinted at the darkness that would later consume him? Imagine a young Ted Bundy, growing up in a home filled with secrets and lies, including the shocking revelation that his sister was, in fact, his mother. How did these early experiences shape his psychological landscape? As we dig deeper, we uncover a childhood marked by a sense of confusion and identity crisis, factors that psychologists often point to as red flags. Bundy displayed an early fascination with the macabre, an unsettling detachment from empathy, and a manipulative streak that would later become his trademark. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. Bundy was also intelligent, performed well in school, and even showed glimpses of charisma that would later serve him in more sinister ways. It's this duality, this blend of light and dark, that makes his early life a psychological enigma. So, as we peel back the layers of Ted Bundy's formative years, we're left with more questions than answers. What psychological red flags can we pinpoint, and how did they contribute to the monster he would become? It's a murky journey, but one that's essential for understanding the enigma that is Ted Bundy. As we venture further into the enigma that is Ted Bundy, it's impossible to overlook the role of his upbringing. Family, they say, is our first introduction to the world, our first influence, and often our first heartbreak. So, what was the Bundy household like? And how did it contribute to the psychological labyrinth that Ted would later navigate? Imagine a young Ted Bundy, growing up in a home shrouded in secrecy. The man he believed to be his father was actually his grandfather, a man known for his violent tendencies and bursts of anger. And the woman he thought was his sister, she was his biological mother, a detail kept hidden from him for much of his life. Psychologists often point to such confusing family dynamics as potential catalysts for emotional and psychological turmoil. The lack of a stable father figure, the hidden truths, and the emotional complexities of his family life could very well have been the first threads in the intricate web of Bundy's psychology. But it's not just about the secrets and lies. Bundy's family was also marked by religious strictness, adding another layer of complexity to his upbringing. How did these factors collide to shape the psyche of a future serial killer? As we dissect the role of family in Ted Bundy's life, we're compelled to ask, can the roots of evil be traced back to the family tree? And if so, how much of Bundy's psychological makeup was a result of his upbringing versus his own inherent nature? It's a complex puzzle, one that adds another layer of depth to the already intricate psychological profile of Ted Bundy. As we delve deeper into the psyche of Ted Bundy, we encounter one of the most perplexing aspects of his personality, his charisma. How could a man capable of such heinous acts also be so charming, so magnetic, so seemingly normal? Imagine Ted Bundy, the life of the party, the man who could captivate a room with his wit and charm. A man who had friends, relationships, and even garnered the admiration of those around him. On the surface, he was the epitome of a charismatic individual, but beneath that veneer lay a master manipulator. Psychologists often discuss the role of charisma in the art of manipulation. Bundy was a textbook case. He used his charm to gain trust, to disarm suspicion, and to lure his victims into a false sense of security. It was this duality, this ability to be both charming and diabolical, that makes Bundy's psychological profile so complex and chilling. But the deception didn't stop there. Bundy also used his charisma to manipulate the legal system, acting as his own attorney and using his public persona to sway opinion. Even behind bars, he managed to escape twice, further showcasing his manipulative skills. So, as we explore this charismatic persona, we're left with unsettling questions. How can someone so seemingly normal harbor such darkness within? What psychological mechanisms enable this level of manipulation and deception? And most importantly, how many more Ted Bundys walk among us, hiding behind a mask of charisma? It's a chilling thought, one that adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ted Bundy and the human psyche. As we continue to unravel the complex psychological tapestry of Ted Bundy, we arrive at two clinical terms that are often associated with him: narcissism and sociopathy. But what do these terms really mean? And how do they apply to Bundy's case? Imagine a man so enamored with himself that he believes he's invincible, that the rules don't apply to him. This is the essence of narcissism, a personality disorder characterized by a grandiose sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy, and a need for excessive admiration. Bundy's narcissistic tendencies were evident in the way he manipulated people, his brazen escapes from custody, and even his decision to represent himself in court. But narcissism alone doesn't capture the full scope of Bundy's psychological profile. Enter sociopathy, a condition marked by persistent antisocial behavior, impaired empathy and remorse, and bold, disinhibited behavior. Bundy's lack of remorse for his victims, his ability to lead a double life, and his manipulative tactics all point to sociopathic traits. So, how do these clinical terms help us understand Ted Bundy? Psychologists argue that the interplay between narcissism and sociopathy in Bundy's personality created a volatile mix, a perfect storm that contributed to his life of crime. As we delve into these clinical perspectives, we're forced to confront unsettling questions. Can such disorders be treated or managed? What are the ethical implications of diagnosing posthumously? And most hauntingly, how many individuals with similar psychological profiles are out there, undiagnosed and unchecked? It's a sobering thought, one that adds another layer of complexity to our quest to understand Ted Bundy and the darker aspects of human psychology. As we journey further into the abyss of Ted Bundy's mind, we arrive at the most harrowing part of his story, the crimes. But we're not just recounting the gruesome details, we're breaking down each phase of his criminal acts from a psychological standpoint. What was going through his mind during the planning, execution, and aftermath of each crime? Imagine Ted Bundy meticulously planning his attacks. The choice of victim, the location, the method, all calculated with chilling precision. Psychologists often refer to this as the fantasy phase, where the perpetrator mentally rehearses the crime, fueled by a twisted sense of excitement and anticipation. Then comes the hunt, the adrenaline-pumping phase where Bundy would seek out his victims. His choice of targets wasn't random. He often chose women who resembled a past romantic partner, adding another layer of psychological complexity to his crimes. The capture and the kill are the most horrifying phases, where Bundy's lack of empathy and remorse were on full display. But even here, his actions were calculated, often prolonging the suffering of his victims to maximize his own sadistic pleasure. And finally, the trophy phase. Bundy was known to revisit the scenes of his crimes or keep personal items from his victims, reliving the experience in a macabre form of nostalgia. As we dissect each phase, we're confronted with a mind that operates on a different moral and emotional plane. What psychological mechanisms allow someone to plan and execute such heinous acts? And how does one reconcile the duality of a man who could be both charming in public and monstrous in private? It's a chilling exploration, one that challenges our understanding of human psychology and forces us to confront the darkest corners of the human mind. As we delve deeper into the twisted psychology of Ted Bundy, it's essential to also focus on the victims, innocent lives forever altered or cut short by his actions. But what was it about these particular individuals that drew Bundy to them? And how did he use psychological tactics to lure them into his web of deceit? Imagine Ted Bundy scanning a crowd, his eyes locking onto a potential victim. It wasn't random. Psychologists suggest that predators like Bundy often look for specific traits or vulnerabilities that they can exploit. Whether it was a particular physical resemblance, a perceived emotional vulnerability, or even something as simple as being in the wrong place at the wrong time, Bundy had a type. But selection was just the first step. Bundy was a master of psychological manipulation, using his charm and charisma to disarm and lure his victims. Whether it was feigning injury to elicit sympathy or posing as an authority figure to gain trust, Bundy employed a range of tactics designed to manipulate psychological responses. As we explore this dark aspect of human interaction, we're forced to confront uncomfortable questions. How can we better understand the psychology of vulnerability to protect potential victims in the future? What signs or red flags could indicate manipulative behavior? And how can society address the psychological factors that contribute to victimization? It's a sobering exploration, one that adds another layer of complexity to the already intricate psychological profile of Ted Bundy and challenges us to think critically about the dynamics of predator and prey. As we continue to dissect the enigmatic psychology of Ted Bundy, we arrive at a chapter that defies logic and baffles the mind, his captures and subsequent escapes. How did Bundy manage to evade capture for so long? And what psychological traits enabled him to take such audacious risks? Imagine Ted Bundy, cornered by the law, his freedom hanging by a thread. For most people, this would be a moment of reckoning, a time to face the consequences. But Bundy was not most people. His psychological profile suggests a high propensity for risk-taking, a trait often associated with both narcissism and sociopathy. The first capture was a pivotal moment, a clash between Bundy's inflated sense of self and the reality of his situation. Psychologists point to this as a crisis point, a moment that could either reinforce or shatter his delusional self-image. But it was his escapes that truly showcased his psychological audacity. Whether it was jumping out of a courthouse window or sawing through prison bars, Bundy displayed a level of cunning and risk-taking that is almost incomprehensible to the average person. So, what drives a man to take such extreme risks? Is it the thrill of the chase, the desperate desire for freedom, or a pathological need to outwit and outmaneuver his pursuers? As we delve into this aspect of Bundy's psychology, we're forced to confront the unsettling reality that some individuals operate on a completely different psychological wavelength, one that enables them to take risks that most of us can't even fathom. It's a riveting exploration, one that adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ted Bundy and challenges us to think critically about the psychology of risk-taking and evasion. As we navigate the labyrinthine psychology of Ted Bundy, we come to a stage that was as theatrical as it was horrifying, the trials. But these weren't just legal proceedings. They were a stage for Bundy to play psychological games, not just with the court, but with the world. Imagine Ted Bundy standing in the courtroom, not as a defendant, but as his own attorney. It was an audacious move, one that allowed him to control the narrative and engage in a psychological battle with the prosecution. But why would he take such a risk? Psychologists point to Bundy's narcissistic traits as a likely explanation. Representing himself in court fed his grandiose sense of self-importance and allowed him to indulge in a delusional belief in his own invincibility. But it wasn't just about ego. It was also a calculated move to manipulate the jury and the public perception. Bundy used his charisma and legal acumen to sow doubt, to charm, and to unsettle. He would often lock eyes with the jury, using nonverbal cues to communicate confidence and sincerity. It was a psychological game of cat and mouse, where Bundy tried to outwit the prosecution and win over the jury. But as the trials progressed, the cracks in Bundy's psychological armor began to show. The mounting evidence, the testimonies of survivors, and the relentless pursuit of justice began to erode his facade, leading to moments where his true, monstrous self was laid bare for the world to see. As we explore this chapter, we're forced to confront unsettling questions. How can the legal system guard against such psychological manipulation? What role does charisma play in the courtroom? And how can we ensure that justice is served when the defendant is a master manipulator? It's a gripping exploration, one that adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ted Bundy and challenges us to think critically about the psychology of legal proceedings. As we reach the penultimate chapter of our deep dive into Ted Bundy's psyche, we turn to the experts, forensic psychologists who have studied Bundy's case in an attempt to understand the mind of a serial killer. What insights can forensic psychology offer? And how has Bundy's case influenced criminal profiling? Imagine a team of forensic psychologists poring over case files, interviews, and psychological assessments, all in an attempt to profile Ted Bundy. These experts use a combination of psychological theories, behavioral patterns, and statistical analyses to create a comprehensive psychological portrait. One of the key aspects they focus on is Bundy's modus operandi, his method of operation. By analyzing the patterns and consistencies in his crimes, forensic psychologists can make educated guesses about his motivations, triggers, and even future behavior. But Bundy was a complex subject, one that defied many of the traditional profiling methods. His ability to adapt, to change his appearance, and to employ different methods made him an elusive target for psychological profiling. So, what have we learned from the experts? Forensic psychologists point to a combination of factors, narcissism, sociopathy, and a host of other personality disorders that contributed to Bundy's criminal behavior. But they also caution that profiling is not an exact science, and that each case offers unique challenges and insights. As we explore this section, we're forced to confront the limitations of forensic psychology. How accurate can profiling be? What ethical considerations come into play when analyzing the mind of a deceased criminal? And how has Bundy's case influenced modern forensic psychology? It's a thought-provoking exploration, one that adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ted Bundy and challenges us to think critically about the role of forensic psychology in criminal justice. As we approach the final chapters of our psychological exploration into Ted Bundy, we encounter a term that sends chills down the spine of even the most seasoned psychologists: the dark triad. This trifecta of personality traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, provides a framework for understanding the darkest aspects of human behavior. And Ted Bundy is often cited as a textbook example. Imagine a Venn diagram, with each circle representing one of these dark traits. At the intersection lies Ted Bundy, a man who exhibited characteristics from all three categories. But what do these terms actually mean? And how did they manifest in Bundy's behavior? Narcissism is characterized by a grandiose sense of self-importance and a lack of empathy for others. Bundy's narcissistic traits were evident in his manipulative behaviors, his need for admiration, and his delusional sense of invincibility. Machiavellianism refers to a person's tendency to be manipulative, deceitful, and exploitative for personal gain. Bundy's Machiavellian tendencies were on full display in the courtroom, where he manipulated the legal system to his advantage, and in his interactions with his victims, whom he deceived and exploited. Psychopathy is perhaps the most chilling of the three, characterized by persistent antisocial behavior, impaired empathy and remorse, and bold, disinhibited, and egotistical traits. Bundy's lack of remorse for his crimes and his cold, calculated actions are hallmark traits of psychopathy. As we delve into this dark tribe, we're forced to confront the most unsettling aspects of human psychology. What environmental or genetic factors contribute to the development of these traits? Can individuals with these traits ever be rehabilitated? Or are they destined to follow a path of destruction? It's a haunting as we near the end of our psychological journey into the enigma that is Ted Bundy. We turn our attention outward, to society at large. How did the media coverage of Bundy's crimes and trials affect the collective psyche? And what can this media frenzy tell us about our own psychological vulnerabilities? Imagine the late 1970s and early 1980s, a time when news was consumed through newspapers, television, and word of mouth. The name Ted Bundy was everywhere, creating a sense of collective fear and fascination. But this wasn't just news, it was a psychological phenomenon that tapped into our deepest fears and curiosity. The media's portrayal of Bundy was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it served to inform and warn the public, contributing to a heightened sense of vigilance. On the other hand, the sensationalized coverage risked turning Bundy into a macabre celebrity, feeding into his narcissistic desires for attention and notoriety. Psychologists point to this media frenzy as a form of social contagion, where emotions and behaviors can spread rapidly among people. The Bundy case triggered a range of psychological responses in the public, from heightened anxiety and fear to a morbid curiosity and even, in some cases, a disturbing sense of admiration for Bundy's charm and intelligence. As we explore this section, we're forced to confront uncomfortable questions. How does media coverage influence our perception of crime and criminals? What psychological mechanisms are at play when we find ourselves captivated by such dark stories? And how can we navigate the ethical and psychological complexities of consuming true crime media? It's a compelling exploration, one that adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ted Bundy and challenges us to think critically about the psychological impact of media on society. As we reach the final chapter of our psychological odyssey into the life of Ted Bundy, we arrive at a moment that is as chilling as it is inevitable: his execution. But even in these final moments, Bundy continued to engage in psychological manipulations, leaving us with questions that haunt us to this day. Imagine Ted Bundy sitting on death row, the clock ticking down to his execution. For most people, this would be a time of reflection, of coming to terms with the gravity of their actions. But Bundy was not most people. Even in his final hours, he sought to manipulate, offering last-minute confessions in exchange for delays in his execution, giving interviews that were a mix of confession and deflection, and even proposing psychological theories about his own behavior. Psychologists point to this final act as a manifestation of Bundy's narcissism and his pathological need for control. Even as he faced the end, he sought to dictate the narrative, to leave a lasting impression on the world and, perhaps, to sow the seeds of doubt about his true nature. But as the clock struck the final hour, and Bundy was led to the electric chair, the psychological games came to an end. Or did they? Bundy's final words were a paradox, a blend of remorse and defiance that left many puzzled about his true feeling. As we explore this final chapter, we're forced to confront the enigma that is Ted Bundy. What was going through his mind in those final moments? Was his remorse genuine, or another act in a lifelong drama of manipulation? And what can his final manipulations tell us about the complexities of human psychology? It's a haunting conclusion, one that adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ted Bundy and challenges us to think critically about the psychological games that can continue even when the stakes are at their highest. As the curtain falls on the life of Ted Bundy, we are left to grapple with the aftermath, a psychological landscape forever altered, marked by scars that may never fully heal. But what are these scars, and how have they shaped our collective psyche? Imagine the families of the victims, forever haunted by the loss of their loved ones. The survivors, who carry the psychological burden of their encounters with Bundy. Law enforcement officers, who dedicated years to capturing and prosecuting him, only to be left with questions that have no easy answers. And society at large, forced to confront the unsettling reality that monsters can exist in human form. Psychologists have studied the long-term effects of high-profile criminal cases like Bundy's, and the findings are sobering. the trauma extends beyond the immediate victims and their families, creating a ripple effect that impacts entire communities. There's a heightened sense of fear, a loss of innocence, and a pervasive anxiety that challenges our basic assumptions about human nature. But it's not all negative. The Bundy case also led to advancements in forensic psychology and criminal profiling, providing valuable tools for understanding and combating criminal behavior. And it sparked important conversations about the role of media in shaping public perception, leading to more responsible reporting practices. As we explore this final section, we're forced to confront the complexities of healing and moving forward. How do individuals and communities cope with the psychological scars left by such a traumatic event? What role do justice and closure play in the healing process? And how can we use the lessons learned from this case to prevent future tragedies? It's a poignant conclusion. As we wrap up our comprehensive psychological profile of Ted Bundy, we turn our gaze to you, the audience, and to society as a whole. How do we perceive individuals like Bundy? And what cognitive biases come into play that shape these perceptions? Welcome to the realm of the monster myth. Imagine the headlines, the news reports, and the water cooler conversations. The term monster is often thrown around, painting Bundy as an almost mythical creature, far removed from normal humanity. But psychologists warn that this monster myth is a cognitive bias that can distort our understanding and even inadvertently contribute to the perpetuation of criminal behavior. Why? Because labeling Bundy as a monster serves to distance him from the rest of humanity, making it easier to dismiss him as an anomaly rather than confront the uncomfortable truth that he was a human being capable of extreme evil. This cognitive dissonance can lead to othering, a psychological mechanism that separates us from them, making it difficult to recognize warning signs in people who are part of our own communities. The monster myth also feeds into the just world hypothesis, a cognitive bias where people believe that bad things only happen to those who deserve it. This can lead to victim blaming and a false sense of security that undermines preventative measures. As we delve into this section, we're forced to confront our own cognitive biases and question how they shape our perception of criminal behavior. Are we unwittingly contributing to a narrative that makes it easier for individuals like Bundy to operate in the shadows? And how can we challenge these biases to foster a more nuanced understanding of criminal psychology? It's a thought-provoking finale, one that adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of Ted Bundy and challenges us to think critically about our own psychological blind spots. As we close the book on our psychological exploration of Ted Bundy, we find ourselves in a space of reflection. What have we learned from this harrowing journey into the human psyche? And what psychological takeaways can we carry forward, both as individuals and as a society? The story of Ted Bundy serves as a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of the complexities of human behavior and the dark corners of the mind that most of us dare not explore. But it also offers valuable lessons. Firstly, the importance of vigilance. Bundy's case illustrates the need for public awareness and education on the signs of manipulative and predatory behavior. It's a call to action for each of us to be more observant, more questioning, and less willing to give the benefit of the doubt when red flags appear. Secondly, the role of media responsibility. As we've seen, the way the media portrays criminal cases can have a profound impact on public perception and even on the outcomes of legal proceedings. This underscores the need for ethical journalism that prioritizes facts over sensationalism. Thirdly, the value of psychological research. Bundy's case has been extensively studied by psychologists, providing valuable insights into criminal behavior, forensic psychology, and even the ethical considerations of the death penalty. It's a testament to the importance of continued research in these areas. As we reflect on these lessons, we're also compelled to look inward. How do our own biases and preconceptions shape our understanding of events like this? Are we willing to confront uncomfortable truths in the pursuit of greater understanding? And how can we apply what we've learned to make our communities safer and more informed? It's a moment of as we come to the end of this psychological deep dive into the life and mind of Ted Bundy. We're left with a mix of emotions, horror, curiosity, and perhaps a newfound awareness of the complexities of human psychology. It's been a journey that has taken us from the depths of human depravity to the heights of psychological insight, and we hope you've found it as enlightening as it has been unsettling. But the conversation doesn't end here. Now, we turn it over to you, our viewers. What are your thoughts on the psychological aspects of Ted Bundy's life and crimes? Do you agree with the expert analyses we've presented, or do you have your own theories? And what other true crime stories would you like us to explore in future videos? We invite you to engage with us. Leave your comments below, share this video with those who might find it interesting, and don't forget to hit the like button if you found this content valuable. Your engagement helps us create more in-depth content like this. So please, let your voice be heard. And for those who are new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future deep dives into the human psyche. Thank you for joining us on this unsettling yet enlightening journey. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and keep questioning.